My name is Mabel, and I'm 34 years old. 3 days ago, my mother called me for the first time in 8 months. Not to ask how I was doing. Not to hear about her grandchildren she's never visited. She called to tell me I needed to sell my husband's land. $3 million. In 2 weeks. To save the family from bankruptcy. The same family that didn't invite me to Christmas dinner because my husband wouldn't fit in. The same mother who told my sister's children that Aunt Mabel married beneath her. The same sister whose genius husband once called Ethan a glorified dirt digger to his face. And now they need us. Before I tell you what happened at my mother's 60th birthday party, what was revealed, and the choice I made, please take a moment to like and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy this story. Drop your location and local time in the comments. I'd love to know where you're listening from. Let me take you back to where this really began. 7 years ago, I was the daughter my mother bragged about at every garden party. Columbia graduate, junior analyst at a boutique investment fund in Manhattan. The kind of job that made Victoria Ashford's eyes sparkle when she mentioned it to her friends. My Mabel, she'd say, swirling her wine glass. She's going to run Wall Street someday. I believed her. I believed that trajectory was my destiny. Corner office, designer suits, a husband with the right last name and the right portfolio. Then I met Ethan at a farmer's market in upstate New York. I'd driven up for a weekend escape. Burnout was eating me alive, and I needed air that didn't taste like exhaust and ambition. He was standing behind a wooden table covered in organic tomatoes and fresh herbs, wearing a faded flannel shirt and boots caked with mud. He wasn't handsome in the polished way I was used to, but when he talked about soil composition and crop rotation, his eyes lit up with a passion I'd never seen in any boardroom. I came back the next weekend, and the next. When I finally brought him home to meet my family, my mother took one look at his calloused hands and asked the question that would define the next 7 years of our relationship. "So, Ethan," she said, her smile thin as paper, "what's your real job?" He didn't flinch, didn't apologize, just smiled and said, "This is my real job, ma'am. I grow food." The silence that followed was deafening. My sister Clarissa leaned over to her husband Derek and whispered something. They both laughed. I pretended not to notice. But I noticed. And that was only the beginning. Our engagement party was supposed to be a celebration. My mother insisted on hosting it at her house, a sprawling colonial in Connecticut that she'd spent decades decorating to impress people she barely liked. 20 guests, champagne, canapes, the works. Ethan wore his best shirt. I could tell he'd ironed it himself. The collar was slightly uneven, and I loved him more for it. Derek and Clarissa arrived 40 minutes late, pulling up in a brand new Porsche. Derek made sure everyone saw it. "Nice wheels," someone commented. "Just a little reward," Derek said, loud enough for the room. "Made partner at the fund last month." When he shook Ethan's hand, his eyes dropped to my fiancé's shoes, clean but worn, practical. "Nice boots," Derek said. "Do they come with the tractor?" A few people laughed. Ethan just smiled. "They do, actually. It's a package deal." Then came my mother's toast. She stood at the head of the room, champagne flute raised, and I made the mistake of hoping. "To Mabel and Ethan," she began. "My youngest daughter has always been independent, headstrong." She paused. "I just hope, in a few years, she won't regret throwing away everything she worked for this." She gestured vaguely at Ethan, at us, at the life she couldn't understand. I looked at my father. Robert Ashford sat in the corner, staring into his whiskey, saying nothing. But my grandmother, Grandma June, reached over and squeezed my hand under the table. "I like him," she whispered. "He's real." That night, lying in bed, I made a decision. I would leave New York. I would build a life with Ethan, and I would stop waiting for my family to see what I saw. I just didn't know it would take 7 years for them to come crawling back. Vermont welcomed us like an old friend. We bought 200 acres of rolling farmland an hour outside Burlington. The house was a fixer-upper, drafty windows, a kitchen from the 70s, a porch that creaked like it was telling secrets. But it was ours. Ethan threw himself into the work. Dawn to dusk, sometimes later. He built raised beds, installed irrigation systems, negotiated with suppliers. I learned alongside him how to read soil, when to plant, what the weather meant for our crops. Within 3 years, our organic produce was selling at 6 farmers markets across the region. Within 5, we had contracts with 3 high-end restaurants in Burlington. And then came Lily. Our daughter arrived on a snowy February morning, screaming her lungs out like she had opinions already. 2 years later, Noah followed, quieter, watchful, with Ethan's steady eyes. I had never been happier. But there was something I didn't talk about. Something Ethan asked me to keep quiet. His work hadn't stopped at farming. During our first winter, while I thought he was just reading agricultural journals by the fireplace, he was actually finalizing patents, running calculations, taking calls with investors he'd known from another life, a life before the flannel shirts and muddy boots, a life at MIT. Ethan had a PhD in agricultural engineering. His thesis on precision farming technology had caught the attention of venture capitalists years ago, but he'd walked away from academia, from the startup offers, from all of it. Until he didn't. He built his company quietly, no flashy launches, no press releases, just steady growth, real solutions, and clients who valued results over hype. They don't deserve to know, he told me once, meaning my family. And I don't need their respect. I never argued, but I always wondered, what would happen if they found out? The call came at 11 p.m. on a Tuesday. I was half asleep, one hand on Noah's back as he finally drifted off after a nightmare. My phone buzzed on the nightstand, and I saw my sister's name, a name that hadn't appeared on my screen in 8 months. Clarissa? She was crying. Not the delicate, performative tears I remembered from our childhood when she wanted something from Dad. These were ugly sobs, ragged and desperate. Mabel, I need your help, her voice cracked. We're in trouble. Real trouble. I stepped out into the hallway, closing Noah's door softly behind me. What kind of trouble? Derek made some bad investments. He lost everything. The house, the cars, our savings. It's all gone. I leaned against the wall, processing. How much? $3 million. We need $3 million in 2 weeks, or Mom loses her house too. She put up the Connecticut property as collateral for Derek's trades. My stomach dropped. She did what? She believed in him. Clarissa's voice turned defensive, then crumbled again. We all did. And now you want me to, what, sell our land? It's just dirt, Mabel. You have hundreds of acres. Just sell a piece of it. Help us. I heard Ethan's footsteps behind me. He'd woken up, watching from our bedroom doorway with quiet concern. I need time to think, I said. Time? We don't have time. Clarissa's desperation curdled into something uglier. You owe us. We're family. Family, I repeated. The word tasted strange in my mouth. I'll call you tomorrow. Call. I hung up before she could respond, but as I stood there in the dark hallway, her voice echoed in my head, specifically, one fragment that didn't make sense. Derek said your husband's company was supposed to fail. It was supposed to fail. What did that mean? I couldn't sleep that night. After Ethan went back to bed, I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop, the blue light harsh against the darkness. I typed Derek's name into Google, adding hedge fund and investment. The results loaded slowly. Then I saw it. Mitchell Capital Partner, Derek Mitchell, terminated following internal review. The article was 6 months old. It described Derek's departure from the fund as mutual, the corporate euphemism for getting pushed out. No details on why, but reading between the lines wasn't hard. Something had gone wrong, badly wrong. I kept digging. A financial forum mentioned his name in a thread about aggressive short positions. Someone had posted, anyone else see Mitchell's bet against that agri-tech startup? Dude went all in. Absolute madman. Agritech. My hands went cold. I picked up my phone and scrolled through my contacts until I found Rachel Simmons, an old colleague from my Wall Street days who now worked in compliance. She answered on the third ring, her voice groggy. Mabel? It's midnight. I know, I'm sorry, I need a favor. This better be good. Derek Mitchell, you know him? A pause, then a dry laugh. Everyone knows Derek Mitchell, or knew him. That guy's a joke now. What happened? Massive short position. He bet against some sustainable farming tech company, bet his entire net worth that they'd tank. And? Stock went up 340%. He got absolutely wiped. Rachel yawned. Whoever runs that company must be laughing their ass off. Derek bet everything on them failing. Poetic, really. I stared at the wall. Whoever runs that company. Thanks, Rachel. I owe you. You owe me brunch. Call me next time you're in the city. I hung up and walked slowly back to the bedroom. Ethan was awake watching me. You found out, he said. It wasn't a question. I sat on the edge of our bed, the phone still warm in my hand. How long have you known? Ethan rubbed his eyes, then sat up against the headboard. In the moonlight through our curtains, he looked tired. Not guilty, just tired. About 8 months. 8 months. I let that sink in. And you didn't tell me. I didn't want to hurt you. He reached for my hand, and I let him take it. The quarterly shareholder reports showed unusual short activity. I had our CFO look into it. Derek's name came up. He bet against your company. Our company, Ethan corrected softly. And yes, he did. I thought about all those years of sneering comments, the way Derek looked at Ethan like he was something to be scraped off an expensive shoe, the dirt digger remark that still made my jaw clench. He wanted you to fail. He needed me to fail. Ethan's voice stayed calm, but I heard the steel underneath. He hated that you chose me over whatever he thought you should have chosen. Someone like him, I guess. It wasn't enough to look down on me. He wanted to profit from my destruction. And you just let it happen? What was I supposed to do, Mabel? Call him up and gloat? Warn him he was about to lose everything? Ethan shook his head. The best response to people like Derek is to keep building, let them destroy themselves. I thought about Clarissa's desperate phone call, about my mother's house on the line. They're asking us to sell our land to cover his losses. I know. Losses he made betting against you. I know. My phone buzzed. A text from my mother. We need to talk. Come to my birthday party. It's important. I showed it to Ethan. He read it, then looked at me. Do you want to go? I did, but not for the reasons my mother expected. The next morning, while Ethan fed the kids breakfast, I found myself searching again. This time, I typed his company name, AgriMind Technologies. The Forbes article appeared on the first page of results, dated 3 months ago. The MIT PhD who left academia to revolutionize sustainable farming. I clicked through and there was Ethan, not in flannel this time, but in a simple navy sweater, standing in front of a greenhouse filled with sensor equipment. The photo credit listed a San Francisco studio. He'd flown out for this and never mentioned it. The article detailed his journey. MIT doctorate at 26, offers from major tech companies he turned down, years of quiet development on precision agriculture technology. And then this paragraph. AgriMind Technologies, now valued at approximately $47 million, has disrupted traditional farming metrics by combining AI-driven soil analysis with sustainable practices. Founder Ethan Farrington remains notably private, preferring to let the company's results speak for themselves. $47 million. My husband, the man my mother thought couldn't provide for me, had built something worth $47 million, while wearing muddy boots, while driving the same truck he'd had when we met, while raising our children and loving our land and never once needing to prove anything to anyone. I saved the article to my phone, not to brag, not to throw in anyone's face, but because I had a feeling I might need the truth to have a face. You found it, Ethan said from the doorway. I looked up. Lily was clinging to his leg, sticky with maple syrup. Why didn't you ever tell them? He shrugged, hoisting Lily onto his hip. Because it wouldn't have changed anything.